The story I'm about to tell you spans 150 million years and involves one of the most remarkable transformations in the history of life on Earth. It's a tale of feathered dinosaurs, mass extinction, spectacular fossil discoveries, and a connection so profound, it literally rewrote our understanding of evolution itself. This isn't just the story of birds. This is the story of how the most terrifying predators to ever walk the planet transformed into the delicate creatures singing in your backyard this morning. But here's what will shock you. Birds didn't evolve from dinosaurs. Birds are dinosaurs. The Tyrannosaurus rex is more closely related to a chicken than it is to a triceratops. And every time you eat a chicken wing, you're essentially eating a dinosaur. In fact, birds are the only dinosaur lineage that survived the catastrophic asteroid impact 66 million years ago. And the proof lies buried in rocks from China, Germany, and deposits around the world that have yielded fossils so perfectly preserved, they still show the outline of feathers that waved in winds that blew during the age of dinosaurs. By the end of this journey through time, you'll discover why some dinosaurs needed feathers millions of years before they could fly, how a single fossil discovered in 1861 became one of the most important specimens in the history of science, and why the asteroid that killed the dinosaurs actually saved the birds. You'll learn about dinosaurs with four wings, about the shocking discovery that Velociraptor was covered in feathers, and about the extraordinary chain of evolutionary innovations that turned scales into feathers and turned ground-dwelling predators into masters of the sky. This is the complete, unfiltered story of bird evolution, from the first feathered dinosaurs 160 million years ago to the 10,000 species of living dinosaurs that share our world today. And trust me, this story is far stranger and more fascinating than you could ever imagine. Our tale begins in the harsh primordial landscape of the Middle Jurassic period, around 160 million years ago. Picture this scene. Vast forests of conifers and ferns stretch to the horizon, their branches swaying in humid breezes. The air is thick and warm, filled with the drone of primitive insects and the distant calls of pterosaurs soaring overhead. But the true rulers of this world walk on two legs, their scales glinting in the dappled sunlight as they hunt through the undergrowth. These are the theropod dinosaurs, a diverse group of bipedal carnivores that includes some of the most fearsome predators ever to evolve. From the massive Allosaurus, standing 16 feet tall and weighing 2 tons, to the much smaller Compsognathus, no bigger than a chicken. These dinosaurs had conquered every predatory niche in their ecosystems. They had hollow bones for reduced weight, powerful hind limbs for speed, grasping hands with sharp claws, and most importantly, a body plan that was already remarkably bird-like in many ways. But something remarkable was happening to some of these theropods, something that had nothing to do with flight and everything to do with survival. They were growing feathers. Here's where the story gets incredible. Feathers didn't evolve for flight. They evolved for insulation, for display, for attracting mates, and for protecting eggs in nests. Flight came later, almost as an evolutionary afterthought when structures that had evolved for completely different purposes were co-opted for a new function. The earliest feathers were nothing like the complex flight feathers of modern birds. They were simple, hair-like filaments called proto-feathers, essentially elongated scales that provided a fuzzy covering to help regulate body temperature. Small theropod dinosaurs, with their high metabolism and active lifestyles, would have lost heat rapidly without some form of insulation. Proto-feathers solved this problem, allowing these dinosaurs to maintain their body temperature and remain active in cooler conditions that would have slowed down their scaly competitors. But we're not relying on guesswork here. Spectacular fossil discoveries from the Liaoning province in northeastern China have provided stunning confirmation of this ancient story. In rocks formed from ancient lake beds, paleontologists have uncovered thousands of dinosaur fossils preserved in such extraordinary detail that the outline of soft tissues, including feathers, are clearly visible as dark stains surrounding the bones. These aren't impressions or traces. These are actual preserved organic compounds from the feathers themselves, sometimes even retaining microscopic structures called melanosomes that once gave the feathers their color. The first of these remarkable fossils was discovered in 1996 when a farmer in Liaoning province uncovered a small dinosaur that would change everything. Sinosauropteryx, which means Chinese lizard wing, was about the size of a turkey and covered from head to tail in a fuzzy coat of primitive feathers. This wasn't a bird. This was undeniably a dinosaur, with teeth in its jaws, a long, bony tail, and short arms that could never have supported flight. But it was also undeniably feathered. The scientific community was stunned. For over a century, birds and dinosaurs had been placed in separate categories, seen as fundamentally different types of animals. But here was a creature that blurred the line between them, a dinosaur that looked like it was wearing a fuzzy coat. Think about what this means. This wasn't a transitional form between dinosaurs and birds. This was evidence that feathers had evolved deep within the dinosaur family tree, long before anything resembling a bird had appeared. It meant that many of the dinosaurs we thought we knew, the ones depicted in museums and movies as scaly reptilian monsters, were actually covered in feathers. The velociraptor of Jurassic Park fame, feathered. The massive Tyrannosaurus rex almost certainly had some feathered covering, at least as a juvenile. Even some herbivorous dinosaurs that weren't related to birds have been found with simple proto-feathers, suggesting that the genetic machinery for making these structures was widespread among dinosaurs. But the Liaoning fossils were just the beginning. As paleontologists continued excavating these remarkable deposits, they uncovered a menagerie of feathered dinosaurs that revealed the step-by-step process of how modern feathers evolved from simple filaments into the complex structures we see today. Caudipteryx, discovered in 1998, had more advanced feathers with central shafts and branches called barbs, arranged in symmetrical patterns on its arms and tail. It couldn't fly. These feathers were too short and too symmetrical, but they formed beautiful fans that were almost certainly used for display. Picture a small dinosaur about 3 feet long, with peacock-like tail feathers strutting and showing off to potential mates. This wasn't behavior we typically associate with dinosaurs, but here was undeniable evidence that dinosaurs engaged in the same kinds of visual displays that modern birds use during courtship. Microraptor, discovered in 2003, took feather evolution even further. This crow-sized dinosaur had long flight feathers on both its arms and its legs, creating a four-winged configuration unlike anything alive today. The feathers were asymmetrical, with the leading edge narrower than the trailing edge, exactly the same structure seen in the flight feathers of modern birds. This asymmetry is crucial for generating lift, proving that Microraptor's feathers weren't just for show. This little dinosaur could glide through the ancient forests, leaping from tree to tree in pursuit of insects and small prey. Analysis of Microraptor's feathers revealed something even more remarkable. The melanosomes preserved in the fossils were arranged in patterns that, in modern birds, produce iridescent colors. Scientists could determine that Microraptor had glossy, iridescent black feathers that would have shimmered with blue and green highlights in the sunlight, making it not just a gliding dinosaur, but a beautiful one. But perhaps the most important fossil in this entire story was discovered long before the Chinese fossil beds revealed their treasures. In 1861, just 2 years after Charles Darwin published On the Origin of Species, workers in a limestone quarry in Bavaria, Germany, uncovered a fossil that seemed almost too perfect to be real. It showed a creature about the size of a raven, with a long, bony tail, clawed fingers, and teeth in its jaws like a dinosaur, but also with unmistakable impressions of feathers and wings like a bird. This was Archaeopteryx, and it would become the most famous transitional fossil ever discovered. The timing of Archaeopteryx's discovery could not have been more perfect. Darwin's theory of evolution by natural selection had just exploded onto the scientific scene, making the radical claim that all species, including humans, had evolved from earlier forms through a gradual process of descent with modification. Critics demanded evidence of transitional forms, organisms that showed characteristics of two different groups, bridging the gap between them. And here, just 2 years later, was exactly such a creature, perfectly preserved in fine-grained limestone that captured every detail of its anatomy. Archaeopteryx lived about 150 million years ago, during the late Jurassic period, in what is now southern Germany, but was then a shallow tropical archipelago. It was unambiguously a transitional form between non-avian dinosaurs and modern birds. From its dinosaur ancestors, it inherited a mouth full of sharp teeth, a long, bony tail made up of many vertebrae, clawed fingers on its wings, and a brain case that was still quite dinosaur-like. From its bird descendants, it had inherited large wings with flight feathers, a wishbone formed from fused collarbones and hollow bones. Most importantly, the feather impressions in the rock showed that Archaeopteryx had the asymmetric flight feathers of a powered flyer, proving this creature wasn't just gliding but actively flying. The debate over Archaeopteryx's flying abilities has raged for over 150 years. Could it truly achieve powered flight, flapping its wings to gain altitude like modern birds? Or was it merely a glider, launching itself from trees and coasting between perches? The answer lies in its anatomy. Archaeopteryx had a relatively large sternum, though not as large as modern flying birds, and while it lacked the strongly keeled breastbone that anchors the massive flight muscles of modern birds, it had enough muscle attachment sites to suggest it could achieve at least some powered flight. Its wings were relatively long compared to its body, and the arrangement of its primary feathers exactly matches what we see in birds that can sustain flapping flight. Most tellingly, several specimens of Archaeopteryx show evidence of damage and healing in the bones of the arm and shoulder, the kinds of stress fractures that are commonly seen in modern flying birds, but not in gliding animals. Archaeopteryx was flying, really flying, even if its flight wasn't as efficient or powerful as the birds that would come later. But the archaeological evidence supporting this story is equally compelling, and it comes with a twist that nobody saw coming. For decades after the discovery of Archaeopteryx, paleontologists assumed that birds had evolved from dinosaurs sometime in the Jurassic period, then followed a separate evolutionary path. Birds were birds, dinosaurs were dinosaurs, and while they might have shared a common ancestor, they were fundamentally different groups. This view dominated paleontology for over a century. Then, in the 1960s, a young paleontologist named John Ostrom made a discovery that would revolutionize our understanding of dinosaur biology. While studying fossils of Deinonychus, a human-sized predatory dinosaur from the early Cretaceous, Ostrom noticed something remarkable. The skeleton of Deinonychus was extraordinarily similar to Archaeopteryx. Both had long arms with grasping hands, a specialized wrist that allowed the hand to fold against the arm, just like a bird folds its wing, a wishbone, hollow bones, and most distinctively, a large sickle-shaped claw on the second toe of each foot. The similarities were so striking that Ostrom began to suspect these creatures weren't just related. They were close relatives, separated by only a few evolutionary steps. Ostrom's work led him to propose that birds hadn't evolved from dinosaurs in some vague ancestral sense. Birds had evolved from theropod dinosaurs specifically, from the same group that included Velociraptor, Deinonychus, and eventually Tyrannosaurus rex. This was a radical proposal. It meant that birds weren't just related to dinosaurs. Birds were dinosaurs, just as much as bats are mammals or whales are mammals. The bird lineage was a branch within the dinosaur family tree, making birds the living descendants of the most successful group of predators ever to walk the earth. The evidence supporting this revolutionary idea grew stronger with every new discovery. Cladistic analysis, a method of determining evolutionary relationships by comparing shared characteristics, consistently placed birds deep within the theropod family tree, specifically within a group called Maniraptorans, which includes Velociraptor, Oviraptor, and Deinonychus. Every new feathered dinosaur discovered in China strengthened this connection. Theropod dinosaurs and birds share over 100 anatomical features that are found in no other animals. They both have hollow bones with thin walls reinforced by internal struts, a specialized wrist joint that allows the hand to fold tightly, a wishbone formed from fused collarbones, a three-fingered hand with the fourth and fifth fingers lost, a hip socket that allows the leg to move only fore and aft rather than sideways, specialized air sacs that extend from the lungs into the bones, creating a highly efficient breathing system, and perhaps most tellingly, they both lay eggs and build nests. Fossil discoveries from Mongolia and China have revealed theropod dinosaurs sitting on nests full of eggs, with their arms spread over them in exactly the same posture that modern birds use when incubating their eggs. Some of these dinosaur parents died in sandstorms while protecting their eggs and were fossilized in this position, creating a heartbreaking but scientifically invaluable snapshot of parental care in the age of dinosaurs. But perhaps the most significant development came from an unexpected direction: molecular biology. In 2005, paleontologist Mary Schweitzer made a discovery that seemed impossible. While studying a Tyrannosaurus rex fossil, her team found soft tissues preserved inside the bones, including what appeared to be blood vessels and structures resembling cells. Even more remarkably, they were able to extract protein fragments from these tissues. When they analyzed the chemical structure of these proteins and compared them to proteins from living animals, the closest match wasn't to modern reptiles or crocodiles. It was to chickens and ostriches. The Tyrannosaurus rex, the most fearsome predator ever to walk on land, was essentially a 40-foot-long, 7-ton chicken. This molecular evidence provided stunning confirmation of what the fossils had been suggesting. Birds aren't just related to dinosaurs. They are dinosaurs, the only surviving lineage of a group that dominated terrestrial ecosystems for 170 million years. Every robin, every eagle, every hummingbird carries in its DNA the genetic legacy of the theropods that once ruled the Mesozoic world. But the story of how dinosaurs became birds isn't complete without understanding the crucial innovations that made flight possible. Feathers were the first step, but many other changes had to occur before a ground-dwelling predator could take to the air. The story of these innovations is written in the fossils of the early Cretaceous period, roughly 120 to 100 million years ago, when the skies were beginning to fill with creatures that we would recognize as birds, even if they still retained some decidedly dinosaurian characteristics. One of the most important innovations was the evolution of the pygostyle, a structure formed from the fusion of several tail vertebrae into a single bone that serves as an anchor point for tail feathers. Modern birds use their tail feathers like a rudder and an air brake, controlling their flight path and landing with precision. Early birds like Archaeopteryx had long, bony tails with feathers attached along their length, a configuration that was heavy and relatively inflexible. The pygostyle allowed birds to reduce the mass of the tail while maintaining a mobile fan of feathers for flight control. This seemingly small change had enormous implications. It shifted the center of mass forward, improving balance and maneuverability. It reduced weight, making flight more efficient. And it created the distinctive short-tailed silhouette that characterizes all modern birds. The evolution of the keeled sternum was equally important. This enlarged, blade-like breastbone provides a massive surface area for attaching the powerful pectoral muscles that power the downstroke of the wings. Modern flying birds have enormous pectoral muscles, often making up 15 to 20% of their total body weight. These muscles need a strong anchor, and the keeled sternum provides it. Fossil birds from the early Cretaceous show a progressive enlargement of the sternum, with later species having progressively deeper keels that allowed for more powerful flight. The hand also underwent dramatic changes. In theropod dinosaurs, the hand had 3 functional fingers, with claws used for grasping prey. In Archaeopteryx, these fingers were still clearly separate, with mobile joints between them and distinct claws at the tips. But in later birds, the hand bones began to fuse together, creating a rigid platform for supporting the primary flight feathers. This fusion sacrificed flexibility for strength, preventing the hand from bending during the powerful forces generated by flapping flight. Modern birds have taken this fusion to an extreme, with multiple bones in the hand fused into a single structure called the carpa metacarpus, a configuration that's wonderfully suited for flight, but utterly unlike the grasping hand of their dinosaurian ancestors. Perhaps the most radical innovation was the evolution of the avian respiratory system, which is fundamentally different from that of mammals or reptiles. Instead of breathing in and out through the same passages like we do, birds have a flow-through system where air moves in one direction through the lungs, while a system of air sacs throughout the body acts as bellows, pushing fresh air through the lungs on both inhalation and exhalation. This system is extraordinarily efficient, allowing birds to extract more oxygen from each breath than mammals can. This is crucial for powered flight, which demands enormous amounts of oxygen to fuel working muscles. But here's the remarkable thing. This system didn't evolve for flight. It evolved in theropod dinosaurs, tens of millions of years before birds appeared. We know this because the air sacs leave distinctive marks on the bones where they invade the skeleton. And these marks are present in theropod dinosaurs from all the major lineages, including the massive long-necked sauropods. The dinosaurs had already invented one of the most efficient respiratory systems in the animal kingdom. And when their descendants took to the air, they already had the equipment needed to sustain the energetic demands of flight. As the Cretaceous period progressed, birds continued to diversify and evolve, experimenting with different body plans and ecological strategies. Some became specialized for marine life, developing powerful swimming abilities while losing the power of flight. Hesperornis was a 6-foot-long bird with tiny wings and powerful legs that lived in the shallow seas that covered much of North America during the late Cretaceous. It dove for fish and may have spent most of its time in the water, coming ashore only to nest. Others took the opposite path, becoming powerful flyers capable of crossing vast distances. Ichthyornis was a gull-sized bird that flew over the same Cretaceous seas, catching fish in its toothed jaws. Despite having teeth, a distinctly dinosaurian feature, Ichthyornis was otherwise remarkably modern in its skeletal structure, with a large keeled sternum, fused hand bones, and a pygostyle. It would not have looked out of place alongside modern seabirds, except for those disconcerting teeth. By 75 million years ago, the late Cretaceous, birds had largely lost their teeth. The exact advantage of toothlessness isn't entirely clear, but it may have related to weight reduction. Every gram matters when you're fighting gravity or to the evolution of the gizzard, a muscular stomach chamber where birds grind up their food using swallowed stones called gastroliths. With a gizzard doing the work of chewing, teeth became redundant and were lost. The evolution of the beak, with its lightweight keratin covering, provided a versatile tool that could be shaped by evolution into thousands of different forms, from the massive seed-crushing beak of a grosbeak to the needle-like probing beak of a hummingbird. But birds were about to face their greatest test. On a day roughly 66 million years ago, an asteroid approximately 6 miles in diameter struck the Earth near what is now the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico. The impact released energy equivalent to billions of nuclear weapons, instantly vaporizing the asteroid and a massive volume of Earth's crust. A fireball expanded outward at supersonic speeds, igniting forest fires across thousands of miles. Tsunamis, hundreds of feet high, devastated coastlines around the world. Most devastating of all, the impact threw trillions of tons of pulverized rock into the atmosphere, where it circled the globe and blocked out the sun for months or even years. The darkness killed the plants, which killed the herbivores, which killed the carnivores. The beautiful, complex ecosystems of the Cretaceous period collapsed in what may have been just a few years, certainly less than a century. The extinction was catastrophic. All non-avian dinosaurs died. Every single species of dinosaur on land, from the massive Triceratops to the fearsome Tyrannosaurus rex, from the duck-billed hadrosaurs to the armored ankylosaurs, went extinct. The pterosaurs, those magnificent flying reptiles that had ruled the skies for 160 million years, died out. The mosasaurs and plesiosaurs that had dominated the oceans disappeared. In total, around 75% of all species on Earth went extinct in the aftermath of the impact. But birds survived. Not all birds. The extinction was severe among bird lineages as well. But some birds made it through the darkness and devastation to rebuild in the new world that emerged after the impact. Why did birds survive when all their non-avian dinosaur relatives perished? The answer lies in a combination of factors. First, body size. The birds that survived were generally small, most were smaller than a crow. Small body size meant lower food requirements, a crucial advantage when food was scarce. Small animals can survive on seeds, insects, and whatever scraps they can find, while large animals need massive amounts of food and starve quickly when their food sources disappear. Second, birds were already adapted for long-distance flight, which meant they could search vast areas for food and escape local disasters. If conditions became intolerable in one area, birds could fly hundreds of miles to find better circumstances. Their non-avian dinosaur relatives, even the fastest runners, were limited to searching relatively small areas. Third, the survivors may have had ecological strategies that favored survival in disrupted ecosystems. Many of the birds that survived were likely seed eaters, and seeds can remain viable in the soil for years, providing a food source even when living plants are scarce. Others may have been aquatic specialists, and aquatic ecosystems, while severely impacted, recovered more quickly than terrestrial ones, because they were partially buffered from the immediate effects of the impact. The exact reasons are still debated, but the outcome is clear. When the dust settled and the sun finally broke through the clouds, the non-avian dinosaurs were gone. But their feathered descendants remained, ready to inherit a world transformed by catastrophe. The extinction of the dinosaurs is often portrayed as the end of the age of dinosaurs, but that's not quite right. It was the end of the non-avian dinosaurs. But birds, the avian dinosaurs, not only survived but thrived in the new world of the Cenozoic era. With the large predatory dinosaurs gone, mammals began to diversify and fill ecological niches that had been closed to them during the Mesozoic. But birds were doing exactly the same thing, diversifying explosively in the 10 million years following the extinction event. By 50 million years ago, most of the major groups of modern birds had already appeared. Genetic studies have revealed that the ancestor of all modern birds lived sometime in the late Cretaceous, before the asteroid impact, and that this ancestor gave rise to 3 major lineages that survived the extinction. From these 3 lineages came all 10,000 species of birds alive today, from hummingbirds to ostriches. from penguins to eagles, from parrots to woodpeckers. This explosive diversification, where a single ancestral species gives rise to a large number of diverse descendants in a relatively short time, is called an adaptive radiation, and it's exactly what happened with birds after the extinction of the dinosaurs. The evolution of birds from dinosaurs required the accumulation of hundreds of evolutionary innovations over tens of millions of years. No single mutation, no single individual, transformed a ground-dwelling dinosaur into a flying bird. Instead, each generation inherited the adaptations of their ancestors and added small modifications that, over vast stretches of time, accumulated into revolutionary changes. Feathers evolved for insulation and display, then were co-opted for flight. Hollow bones evolved to reduce weight for faster running, then were adapted for the even stricter weight requirements of flight. The efficient respiratory system evolved to support the high metabolism of active predators, then was adapted for the extreme demands of powered flight. Each innovation built on what came before, creating a chain of evolutionary changes that transformed one type of creature into another, while leaving an unbroken chain of living populations connecting ancestor to descendant. This is evolution at its most magnificent, a process of gradual change over immense time periods that can transform scales into feathers, arms into wings, and ground-dwelling predators into aerial masters. Modern genetic studies have confirmed and extended what the fossils revealed. By comparing the DNA of living birds with that of crocodilians, the closest living relatives of dinosaurs, scientists have been able to trace the genetic changes that underlie the dinosaur-to-bird transition. Many of the genes involved in developing scales in reptiles are still present in birds, but they're expressed differently, turned on in different patterns that produce feathers instead of scales. The genetic machinery was already there in dinosaurs. Evolution didn't have to invent feathers from scratch. It just had to modify the existing developmental program that made scales, tweaking the timing and location of gene expression to produce a new structure. This principle, that evolution works by modifying existing structures rather than designing new ones from nothing, is called descent with modification. And it's exactly what Darwin predicted 160 years ago. Birds are modifications of dinosaurs, carrying the same basic body plan, but altered by millions of years of natural selection for flight. You can still see the dinosaur in every bird. The scaly skin on a chicken's legs isn't convergent evolution. Those are dinosaur scales, inherited from theropod ancestors. The way birds walk, with their legs positioned directly underneath their bodies, is exactly how theropod dinosaurs walked. The three-toed foot of most birds is the same three-toed foot of theropod dinosaurs, with the first toe reversed to form a grasping perch and the same distinctive bone structure. Even bird behavior echoes their dinosaurian heritage. The elaborate courtship displays of birds of paradise, with their colorful plumage and complex dances, are the descendants of the display behaviors that feathered dinosaurs like Caudipteryx engaged in 125 million years ago. The aggressive territorial behavior of many birds mirrors the territorial behavior of their theropod ancestors. The devoted parental care that most birds show, sitting on nests, feeding helpless chicks, and defending their young from predators. All of these behaviors have deep roots in dinosaur behavior, as evidenced by fossilized nesting sites and adults preserved in the act of guarding their eggs. And here we stand today, 150 million years after Archaeopteryx first flew through Jurassic skies. From feathered theropods to internet bird watchers, from the terrifying roar of Tyrannosaurus to the cheerful song of a robin, the dinosaur lineage has proven something extraordinary about the power of evolution and adaptation. They survived the greatest mass extinction in the last 180 million years, while maintaining the essential characteristics that made them successful in the first place: hollow bones, efficient respiration, and those remarkable feathers. Today, with over 10,000 species of birds living on every continent and in virtually every habitat from Antarctic ice sheets to tropical rainforests, from oceanic islands to urban centers, that ancient lineage of theropod dinosaurs continues to thrive and evolve. Every time a hummingbird hovers in front of a flower, executing aerial maneuvers that no helicopter can match, you're watching the descendants of Velociraptor demonstrating the fruits of 150 million years of evolutionary refinement. Every time a peregrine falcon stoops on its prey at over 200 miles per hour, making it the fastest animal on Earth, you're witnessing the hunting prowess of theropod dinosaurs focused and perfected for aerial pursuit. Every time you hear the dawn chorus of songbirds greeting the sunrise, you're hearing the voices of dinosaurs. the only dinosaurs that survived to see another age. The transformation from dinosaur to bird wasn't a linear progression towards some predetermined goal. Evolution doesn't work that way. It was a meandering path of adaptations, each of which solved some immediate problem or provided some immediate advantage, that accumulated over millions of years into something unprecedented. The dinosaurs that evolved feathers didn't know they were taking the first step toward flight. They were just trying to stay warm, to attract mates, to protect their eggs. The dinosaurs that evolved hollow bones didn't know they were reducing their weight for eventual aerial locomotion. They were just becoming faster, more agile predators. But each innovation, selected for its immediate benefits, set the stage for future innovations that built upon it, creating the possibility space in which flight could eventually evolve. This is perhaps the most profound lesson of the dinosaur to bird transition. Evolution is not a process of purposeful design working towards specific goals. It's a process of tinkering, of modifying existing structures for new purposes, of building complexity from simplicity through the accumulation of small changes over vast stretches of time. The bird's wing wasn't designed on some cosmic drawing board. It was cobbled together from the bones and muscles of a dinosaur arm, modified and refined by millions of generations of natural selection acting on random genetic variations. And yet, for all its contingency and historical accident, the result is one of the most elegant and efficient flying machines ever to evolve. So efficient that birds have conquered the air more completely than any other group of flying animals. Yet it remains fundamentally unchanged, a partnership between structure and function, between heritage and innovation, that demonstrates how the past shapes the present in ways both obvious and subtle. Birds carry within their bodies the legacy of their dinosaurian ancestry, but they've also transcended that heritage to become something uniquely themselves, something that no non-avian dinosaur ever achieved. They are living proof that the great extinction of 66 million years ago, while it ended one chapter in Earth's history, opened another chapter that is still being written today. The age of dinosaurs didn't end, it transformed. It took to the air and found new ways to thrive in a changed world. And every bird you see is a reminder that the line between extinction and survival, between the past and the present, between dinosaurs and birds, is far thinner than we ever imagined. The dinosaurs aren't gone. They're singing outside your window right now.